Hello, BookTube, and this is a video regarding week one of New Worlds November, where the theme was terrestrial. And I want to specifically talk about one of my readings. I'm going to do a number of videos for this, but not this book, but the other readings that I had, uh, and this one is Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End. It was originally written in 1941. This one is a Tor paperback, uh, 2010. Now, in 1990, Arthur C. Clarke has a bit of a foreword to this, and he added a three-page chapter one, like a prologue to it. Didn't change really much for the story. This was a reread for me. I read it many, many years ago and thoroughly loved it, and always thought this was a great novel, science fiction novel, mainly because of the ideas that are in it. I still think it's very good. It's not as good as I remember it. It's basically a first contact situation where aliens come to Earth, and presumably huge ships that sort of hover over cities, and they're called the humans call them the overlords. And for the first about 50 years, they don't get to see them. They're just dictated to by these overlords. That if you don't do X, Y, and Z, like put away your nuclear toys and play nicely in the sandbox, we're going to force you to do this. So humanity acquiesces and falls in line for the first 50 years. They basically work together. They try to get humans to live together, get rid of racism, and like make things a little more peacefully. But then at the end of 50 years, they show themselves, and they sort of look like devils. They got wings. They look like the old view of the devil in certain ways, because they have a tail, I believe, as well. But they're very advanced. They're very advanced, and they give humans a lot of things, like a little viewer. They could look into history. It's like watching a TV and looking into the past, but they can only tune in to certain periods. Now they find out that the aliens are there for a task. Humanity is getting to a point for its next evolutionary step, and but because of nuclear weapons, there is the potential for humans to eradicate itself, like to destroy themselves. So that's why the overlords are there, to make sure that doesn't happen and sort of hold humanity's hand into the next level. There is I'm not going to get into too many spoilers here, but excuse me. But there will be a few, but I'm not going to go into too much detail of the big spoiler things. So yeah, so that's what they're here for. And like I say, in the first 50 years, this happens, and they, everything, there is some pushback against the aliens for this, but not much. And as I say, humans acquiesce. Religion sort of disappears, falls away, and the next evolution is allowed to come through with the last generation of humans. Yes, last generation. And I won't go into too much details, but it turns out that, as I say, the overlords are there to usher this in, or make sure this goes through peacefully. This is their role in the universe, dictated by an overmind. They call them, this other mind, an overmind. The overlords will never achieve this. Only some species do in the universe. and they go and they are told where to go by the sounds of things, and they help the birth of this new evolutionary level. Now, and they feel bad about this because they feel that the species and humans are lucky that they can go to this next level. And as I say, there's a lot of themes in this, religious themes, because there is sort of this because there's the devil aspect of the way they look like, and there's the thought that they might have visited Earth in the past, but they haven't. But that's sort of explained by something else that happens with the next evolutionary step. Again, I'm not going to give away too many things here, uh, but they see, the thing is, these overlords, they don't believe in anything other than the overlord, which they don't Arthur C. Clarke doesn't have any of the characters talk about that there's a religious aspect, but it is in a sense, because the overlords are deathly afraid. Like they are extremely afraid of this overmind, and it's with religious awe that they have, but it's not treated as in the story and called religion, but has all the trappings of religion. And what happens is kind of mind blowing. That's all I can say. For the first time you read it, it's a bit mind blowing of what happens in this story at the end. Fabulous idea and everything there, but it's the execution I have issues with, and I've had quite a few issues like this with Arthur C. Clarke. His characters and the plot doesn't sometimes hold together very well, and very much so with this, because it just sort of, for the most part, these overlords come and show, forces humans to do this, and they just go, oh, okay. And they don't, there is a bit of pushback, but not much. There is no concentrated effort. And then when they find out that instead of 100 or 1,000 ships that were hovering over cities, there was only one, at that point, there still isn't animosity, it seems to be, against them. And that religion and everything is just given up, all these things given up so easily, and at the end given up. There's one character there that stows away on one of the overlords spaceships to see their home planet, so he's gone for about 80 years because of the time dilation. And he comes back, and again, it's like it just, his character doesn't ring true with what is what he did before and what he does later. And again, I'm not gonna go into those details. It just, his character isn't consistent, and the change is not explained in my mind at all. Like, he doesn't, it's not explained. So I have those problems with this story. But it is a first contact, and there are a number. I'm going to talk about this in another video of the other books that I read in the first week that have to do with first contact and how that they are treated in each of them, and communication. Because here it seems like the communication happens very quickly, and it's clear that they have computers, but there's other things that is sort of, I always give a bit of a smirk when I read this in science fiction, where clearly everything, when science fiction writers will write something, like they got spaceships and they've got computers, they've got all this stuff, highly advanced stuff, and these aliens have ability to have a TV that shows the past. However, in the early days, when they're communicating between the ground and the spaceship, they're using a teletype machine, which was around in 1954, but it just doesn't, it's like, there's one thing that I find a lot of time with science fiction writers: they'll do everything else, but then they don't change all the technology. They don't make, and they don't, I don't know what it is, but it's sort of like, well, they don't think of that changing. It's going to be the same. And I always think of of this thing, and it's been pointed out before in the old, I think it's Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon serial, where they're flying around in these spaceships and that, and then they go to get, they're saying, oh, we need to take the radio, and it's this huge backpack thing for a radio, and it's kind of funny because, but the thing is, like a lot of times things are done like that to make they're familiar for the audiences. So teletype was familiar with an audience. That's easy, but I don't know if it's easily explained away as that, um, because it is science fiction, so you expect technological advances. May not be so much miniaturization, but something different than you have at the present of when the author was writing. But anyway. And yeah, their communication seems to be really, really easy. And the first contact is just an easy thing. But yeah, it's all these things together. Like it moves along quite well. There is a point that it almost seems there's an abrupt change in the story narrative and the style it's done. Um, it's it's a point where all of a sudden they go from like a bigger, like the world thing, to a small community on an island in the Mediterranean, and it just seems that there is a almost like a discontinuity between those, how it's happened there, and it's almost as if these are two different entities that he's written and then put together. But I don't know. I don't know the full history behind this. Uh, but then when I was thinking of this, because of the aliens saying that, we're here to stop you from nuclear warfare, I was thinking of Day the Earth Stood Still, when Klaatu and Gort come to Earth and says that, like instead of, destroying yourself, or, we won't allow you to destroy yourselves or potentially cause problems with other species or other civilizations outside of Earth. So we're coming to warn you, to tell you, fix it, or we will fix it for you. And that idea is in here. And that the movie was made in 1951, the Day the Earth Stood Still. The story was written by Harry Bates in 1940, published in Astounding magazine. Now, I had known quite a while, it's sort of in readings, that Arthur C. Clarke had always thought highly of the Day the Earth Stood Still. So I wonder if there's a connection there, and also too, this little memoir that he does. It's called Astounding Days that he did. It's a science fictional autobiography, and he goes through. It's mostly with Astounding, and he talks about stories that made impressions with him and why. That made an impression with him, and he does talk about Farewell to the Master, which was the original story that Harry Bates wrote in 1940, based on or no, that the Day the Earth Stood Still was based on. Changed very much so. I did a video sort of comparing the short story to the film. I'll see if I can link that below if anybody's interested in looking at that. So I won't go into the detail there. But the big punchline at the end, and this is a spoiler for it, you can't get away from it, it's a short story. That doesn't really get it in the film in the same way. Like in the film, you find out that the overlords, the people that control things, are the robots. Gort, who is Gnut, Gnut, in the story. But at the end, the human is saying, please tell your master that, we didn't mean to kill him, basically, or the master next to come. And the robot, Gnut, says, you misunderstand. I am the master. And that's a ba-dum-dum-dum ending. Now, you see, every time, like in Childhood's End, you think all the way through that the overlords are the masters. They're not. They're not the masters. The overmind is the master. So is that another connection there? Possibly. possibly tenuous. And I'll just give some a little more information. I'll end up on this here, just in case anybody's interested in it. Um, it's published. Victor Golan's this one is 1989. Yeah, and it's fairly short, and it's dedicated to Harry Bates, F. Orland Tremaine, and John W. Campbell. Um, they were editors of Astounding Magazine, so it's very much well, there's a bit of information about the history of Astounding and the editors, but mostly how the stories affected Arthur C. Clarke. Um, and it's a fun little picture on the front where he's in a spaceship. I mean, a spacesuit, and it's almost like an Astounding Magazine cover in rough shape. But anyway, that's. Have you read Arthur C. Clarke's Childless Anne? Like I say, don't get me wrong. It's a great novel. I do really like it. It's just that it's those things that take it down a notch from being truly great. Like the idea in here, I just love the whole, like the potential of it, because you don't, at the end, you still don't know what's happening, and it just opens up the mind of the possibility of what is really going on here. What is happening? Why is it happening? You don't get any answers for this at all. But it's the way he does it, the way he tells the story, the characters, and the motivations for the characters, which really take a second, takes a back seat, and not, I don't think, done that well. But otherwise, absolutely fabulous. Thank you, BookTube.